My wife cheated on me with our neighbor, then forged my signature to sell our family home for $350, $0. Now she's claiming I abandoned her and the kids, and we're headed to court over everything. I never saw it coming. I never thought I'd be the guy whose wife would cheat on him, let alone do it with our neighbor, and then go as far as forging my signature to sell our family home for a quick buck. Honestly, the whole thing hit me like a freight train out of nowhere. One day everything was normal, well, as normal as it could be, and the next I was unraveling a web of lies I didn't even know existed. Her name, Jessica. We'd been married for about 8 years, and honestly I thought we had a pretty stable life. We had 2 kids, a nice house, decent jobs. Yeah, we had our fights, but nothing out of the ordinary. But somewhere along the line I started noticing things. Small stuff at first. A missed call here, a text she'd hide when I walked into the room, her phone suddenly glued to her hand. I'd ask her about it and she'd brush me off, call me paranoid. She'd say I was overthinking, that she loved me, but I could feel the distance growing, like she was hiding something. Then came the little things that didn't add up, her working late more often, her being unusually defensive when I asked about her whereabouts, and her phone suddenly having a password she never used before. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I knew something was off. Still, I held back, trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she was just stressed or dealing with work stuff. I told myself that until I found that damn email. It was a random Tuesday evening. I was looking for my keys in her purse because I'd misplaced them and out of habit glanced at her phone. That's when I saw it, an email draft half-written with a subject line that made my stomach drop. Can't wait to see you tonight. The email was addressed to someone called Jake, and it was filled with flirtatious language, plans to meet up, and a lot of talk about escaping for a night. My hands went cold. I stared at it, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't want to believe it at first. Maybe it was just a stupid joke or a misunderstanding. But then I looked at her recent texts and there were more signs. Messages exchanged late at night, quick replies, and a lot of emojis that didn't seem innocent. I felt sick, like I'd been punched from every side. I needed to confront her, but I didn't want to do it without proof. So I started digging deeper secretly. I installed a keylogger, checked her bank account activity, anything that could give me clarity. What I found was worse than I expected. Her bank statements showed she'd been withdrawing money, cash, from an ATM near the neighbor's house. And on top of that, I noticed a sudden surge in credit card charges, dinners, hotel stays, gifts, all paid for in her name but clearly linked to her secret meetings with Jake. I was furious, devastated, and confused all at once. How could she do this? How could she betray everything we built together? The day I finally confronted her, I was trembling. I had all the evidence laid out on the kitchen table, her emails, texts, bank statements. She looked at me with that bitchy smirk she always threw on when she knew she was about to lie her way out of something. She said I was overreacting, that I was imagining things, that I was controlling. She told me the email was just a joke, that Jake was a friend, and that I shouldn't jump to conclusions. But I knew better. I could see it in her eyes, the guilt, the denial, the way she kept twisting her story. That moment crushed me. I felt like I'd been punched again, only this time in the chest. I realized my wife had been lying to my face for months. She had been sneaking around, cheating, and then to top it off, she forged my signature to sell our house. I found out through the bank records and legal notices. Our home, the one I worked so hard for, was gone in a matter of days. She signed everything, claiming I had abandoned her and the kids, that I was a deadbeat dad who walked away. That was the last straw. I never saw it coming, honestly. I always thought I knew her, but the truth was she was a different person entirely. The betrayal was just about the affair. It was the lying, the stealing, the manipulation. I felt like a fool, used, betrayed, and completely. Now I'm left with nothing but a broken heart, a house that's no longer mine, and a wife who's spinning lies like she's in some twisted game. I don't know how to move on from this, but I do know one thing. Revenge is starting to look pretty tempting. After I found out about the affair and the forged signature, my world completely shattered. I'd always prided myself on being a cautious guy, someone who believed in honesty and hard work. Turns out I was just blind. Jessica's betrayal cut deeper than I expected, especially because she kept spinning her lies as if she was some victim in all this. She kept telling me I was crazy, that I was overreacting, that I was controlling her. Yeah, right. She'd always been bitchy when she felt she was losing control, but now I saw her true colors. The worst part was realizing she'd already sold our house, our family home, without my knowledge or consent. I had no say, no chance to fight back. The money was gone and she claimed she used it to start fresh, all while claiming I had abandoned her and the kids. That was her story anyway, but I knew better. She'd been planning this for a while, I was sure of it. The evidence was piling up and I was furious. But I couldn't just go storming into court without a plan. That's when I started piecing together a plan for revenge. I didn't want to just let her walk all over me, not after everything. I started by gathering more proof, screenshots of her messages, copies of the fake signatures, the bank records. I wanted her to see I wasn't going down without a fight. I also started talking to a lawyer, trying to understand my rights because I wasn't just going to sit back and let her take everything. The house, the money, the kids. She was trying to spin everything so I'd look like the bad guy, but I had proof she was the one cheating, forging documents, and lying through her teeth. I knew her enough to see she was the kind of person who would spin a story to save herself. That's why I decided I needed to hit back hard. I started drafting my own legal notices, consulting with a private investigator to confirm her meetings with Jake, and even digging into her financials further. I was determined to expose her lies, no matter what it took. I also made sure I'd be there for the kids, because no matter how much I wanted to rip her apart, I knew I had to keep my head clear for them. They didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of this mess. One night I caught her sneaking out again. This time, I followed her discreetly. She went to some hotel near the edge of town, and I watched from a distance as she went inside with Jake. Seeing that in person was like a punch to the gut. I felt like I was in some terrible movie. I didn't want to confront her there and then. I just wanted to have everything ready for when I did. I took pictures, recorded the license plate, and made sure I had enough to prove what she was up to. I knew I needed to be smart about this. Meanwhile, she kept lying, spinning stories about how I was a terrible husband, how I'd abandoned her and the kids, and how she was just trying to survive. She claimed I was emotionally abusive, that I was controlling, and that she was just trying to find happiness. It was all bullshit. She was the one cheating, stealing, and lying. But she was good at manipulating, and I could see her trying to turn the story around. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. I'd loved her once, but now I saw her for what she really was, a liar, a thief, and a cheat. I started getting calls from the lawyer, telling me to prepare for court. Jessica had already filed papers claiming I'd abandoned the family, that I was an unfit father, and that I had no right to anything. That's when I realized she was trying to manipulate the legal system, probably hoping to keep the house and the money while I got nothing. But I wasn't going to let her win that easily. I had enough evidence to fight back. I also hired my own investigator to look into her financials and her affair with Jake. I needed to be one step ahead. It was a whirlwind of emotions, anger, betrayal, sadness. I kept thinking about the life we'd built, how she destroyed it all for some guy and some quick cash. I'd never felt so betrayed in my life. The house we bought with my hard-earned money, the life we built for our kids, gone in a matter of weeks. And for what? A fling, a game. It made me sick to think she'd throw everything away for some neighbor's dick and a few extra dollars. I was starting to see her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd do anything to get her way. Now I'm just trying to hold it together, stay focused, and prepare for the fight ahead. I know this isn't over, but I'm not going down without a fight. I want her to pay for what she did, for the lies, the theft, and the betrayal. I want justice, not just for me, but for my kids, who deserve better than a mother who cheats, lies, and steals from their own family. This is just the beginning of what I hope will be a long, hard battle. After I started gathering all the evidence, I realized I couldn't just confront her blindly. Jessica was a master at spinning stories, and I knew she'd try to manipulate the situation to her advantage. I needed a solid legal plan, and I needed to be careful with how I handled everything. I hired a lawyer who specialized in family law, and we started building a case. The goal was clear: prove her fraudulent activities, her affair, and her betrayal, and fight for my rights, especially for the kids and the house if I could get it back or at least some fair settlement. Jessica, of course, kept playing the victim. She'd call me paranoid, accuse me of stalking her, and claim I was trying to ruin her reputation. The way she spun it, I was the bad guy for catching her cheating and exposing her lies. That bitch was good at twisting the truth, making herself look innocent while I was the villain. She'd go out of her way to make me look unhinged, sending nasty texts, calling me controlling, and trying to turn the kids against me. I could tell she was desperate to hold onto her new life, no matter what damage she caused. Meanwhile, I was trying to keep my cool. I didn't want to give her ammunition to use against me. In court, I stayed quiet, collected more proof, and stayed focused. I even started documenting everything: the conversations, the meetings, the money transfers. I wanted a paper trail so that if it came down to court, I'd have everything I needed to prove her guilt. I was angry, sure, but I knew I had to be smart. If I lost my temper or acted impulsively, I'd give her the upper hand. One day, I got a tip from a private investigator I'd hired. Turns out Jessica had been seeing Jake even more frequently than I thought: multiple secret meetings, hotel stays, nights away from the kids. The investigator had pictures, video footage, and bank statements. Seeing her with him in those photos made my blood boil. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so naive. She'd been lying to my face, sneaking around behind my back, and then she had the audacity to accuse me of abandoning her. The nerve. That night, I sat down and really thought about what I wanted. I knew I couldn't stay married to someone who had lied and cheated so blatantly. I felt betrayed, not just because she cheated, but because she had stolen our home, forged my signature, and tried to turn everything upside down. I was angry, so angry I could hardly sleep. But deep down, I knew I had to do what was right for me and the kids. If I didn't stand up now, I'd forever be a victim of her lies. I also started secretly talking to some of her friends and family. I wanted to see if anyone knew about her affairs or her plans. The more I dug, the more I found out she'd been telling people I was an absentee father, that I was abusive, that I was the reason everything was falling apart. None of it was true. I'd been the one holding us together all these years, working my ass off to give the family a good life. And now, she was trying to rewrite history to save herself. The court date was set. I remember feeling this strange mix of dread and relief. Dread because I knew it was going to be a tough fight, and relief because I finally had a chance to expose her lies publicly. I was ready to show the court everything: the emails, the bank statements, the photos. I wanted her to see that I wasn't going down without a fight. I also started preparing myself emotionally. I knew this process would be messy, painful even, but I was determined to get justice. Jessica kept up her act, playing the innocent victim in front of everyone. She'd cry, throw tantrums, and try to paint herself as the wronged wife. But I could see through her act now. It was obvious she was panicking, losing control of the situation. I'd catch her sneaking around, trying to hide evidence, or spinning some new lie that I could easily see through. I realized that her desperation was a sign I was getting closer to uncovering everything. In the meantime, I kept my distance from her. I didn't want to give her any more ammunition. I focused on my kids, making sure they didn't get caught in the crossfire. I told them the truth in my own way, that I loved them and I was doing everything I could to make sure they'd be okay. It broke my heart seeing them confused, but I knew I had to be strong for them. Jessica's lies were starting to unravel, and I knew the truth would come out. In court, I just had to hold on until then. The court date finally arrived, and I felt like I was walking into a war zone. I had all my evidence meticulously organized: emails, texts, bank statements, the investigators' reports, and I was ready to lay everything out. Jessica, of course, played her part perfectly, crying, acting like the innocent wife who had been betrayed by her controlling husband. She spun her web of lies, claiming I'd abandoned her and the kids, that I was an emotional abuser, and that she needed to start fresh for the sake of her mental health. It was disgusting to see her try to manipulate the court like that. But I had my proof. I sat there listening to her testimony, watching her try to twist facts, and I knew I had to stay calm. When it was my turn, I presented everything: the emails, the bank records showing her secret withdrawals, the photos of her with Jake, the forged signature documents. I explained how she'd forged my signature to sell our house, how she'd been lying to everyone about me, and how she'd been planning this entire betrayal for months. I saw her face twist in anger when I laid it all out, but I didn't care. I knew the truth was on my side. The judge listened carefully, asking questions, scrutinizing the evidence. I felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. Relief because I finally had a chance to expose her fully, and anxiety because I didn't know what the verdict would be. Jessica's lawyer tried to claim I was controlling and emotionally abusive, but I had witnesses and proof to counter every lie. I could see her losing her composure, her bitchy facade cracking just a little. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor on several counts. She ordered Jessica to return the money from the house sale, which was more than I expected, considering how much she'd already spent. She also ordered her to pay child support and to stay away from Jake and the hotel meetings. And most importantly, her request to keep the house, something I'd fought hard for. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Jessica looked furious as she stormed out of the courtroom, her face twisted in rage. But the victory was bittersweet. I knew this wasn't the end. Jessica had already forged my signature, so she'd likely try to fight the court's decision. I also knew she'd continue her manipulative ways, probably trying to turn the kids against me or make more false accusations. Still, I felt a strange sense of relief. I'd finally stood up to her, fought for what was right, and exposed her lies. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to breathe a little easier. In the days that followed, I started slowly rebuilding. I contacted a new lawyer to handle the next steps in the case, especially the forged signature issue and her attempt to claim I abandoned her. I also moved into a small apartment nearby, trying to give the kids a stable environment while we sorted everything out. Jessica, of course, kept spinning her stories, claiming I was trying to ruin her reputation and that I was the bad guy. But I didn't care anymore. I had the truth on my side, and that was all I needed. One thing I learned from this nightmare is that betrayal cuts deep, but it also reveals who people really are. Jessica's true colors came out in court: selfish, manipulative, willing to do anything for money or her new life. I used to think she was my partner, now I see her as someone who was just pretending all along. I never imagined she'd do something so calculated and cruel, but I've come to accept that some people are just like that, selfish and dishonest. I also realized how important it is to stand up for yourself, especially when everything feels like it's falling apart. I could have just rolled over, accepted her lies, and let her take everything. But I fought back. I fought for my reputation, my rights, and the truth. It wasn't easy, and honestly, I still feel the pain of betrayal every day. But I know I'm stronger now because of it. I've learned that sometimes you have to take the fight to them and show everyone what the real story is. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the signs earlier, but I also know that some things are just impossible to predict. The important thing is that I stood my ground when it mattered most. And I want anyone reading this to know: don't be afraid to fight for yourself. Trust your instincts, gather your proof, and never let someone else's lies define your life. Justice might take time, but it's worth fighting for. After the court victory, I thought I'd finally get some peace, but Jessica wasn't done. She started pulling out all the stops, trying to manipulate the situation, spinning more lies to turn the kids against me. She'd tell them I was a bad father, that I'd abandoned the family, and that I didn't care about their feelings. The worst part was seeing the confusion in their eyes, my own kids, caught in the middle of this mess. I wanted to protect them from her lies, but I knew I couldn't shield them completely. Jessica's bitchy side really came out during this phase. She'd call me names, accuse me of trying to ruin her, and throw tantrums whenever I tried to visit the kids or talk to them. She'd say I was controlling, that I was trying to take them away from her. But I knew the truth. I'd fought so hard to prove her deceit, and I wasn't about to let her turn everything upside down just because she was losing control. I kept showing up, staying consistent, and doing everything I could to be there for them. Meanwhile, I started to rebuild my own life little by little. I got a new job, one that paid enough to keep me afloat, and I moved into a modest apartment nearby. I didn't want the kids to feel like I was abandoning them, so I made a point to be present, to listen, and to support them as best I could. Jessica kept trying to me, but I just kept doing right by my kids. I knew I couldn't control her lies, but I could control how I responded, by being there for them and showing them the truth through my actions. The legal battle over the house and the money was still ongoing. Jessica had already forged my signature to sell our home, a house I'd worked my entire life to buy, and she'd taken the money and ran. But I had proof, and I was determined to get justice. I filed a lawsuit to reverse the sale and to recover the funds she'd stolen. It was a long, exhausting process, filled with court hearings, depositions, and more lies from Jessica. She kept insisting she was the victim, that I'd abandoned her and the kids, and that she was just trying to start over. But the evidence told a different story. Throughout this chaos, I also discovered more about Jessica's manipulative nature. She'd been secretly talking to her friends, trying to paint herself as the innocent victim, and even claiming I'd been abusive, something I knew was a flat-out lie. I had no history of violence or control issues. All of her accusations were just tools to turn people against me, to make herself look good while she screwed everyone over. It made me realize how deep her lies went and how much she'd do to protect her new life. One night I caught her sneaking out again, this time to meet Jake. I followed her discreetly, watching her go into a hotel room. I took pictures from a distance, feeling my stomach turn with anger. Seeing her with him in the flesh made everything real. I had been right all along. She was cheating, lying, and using me. That moment cemented my resolve to fight harder, to make sure she paid for everything she'd done. I also started to think about the bigger picture, how I'd let myself be manipulated for so long, how I'd ignored the signs. I'd always been the trusting type, believing in the best in people, but I learned a harsh lesson. Some people are just good at lying, hiding their true selves until it's too late. I also realized I had to be smarter, more cautious, and more aware of the red flags. Trust is essential, but so is protecting yourself from those who would use and betray you. Despite everything, I kept my focus on the kids. I wanted to be a good father, no matter how much Jessica tried to poison their minds against me. I spent weekends with them, took them out, and made sure they knew I loved them. I didn't want her lies to define their view of me. I knew I'd have to work hard to rebuild trust, and it wouldn't happen overnight. But I was committed to being there for them, no matter what. The legal battles dragged on, each one revealing more of Jessica's true nature. I saw her desperation, her attempts to spin more lies, and her frantic efforts to hold onto her new life. But I also saw her losing control. The more she pushed, the more evidence piled up against her. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and exhaustion. Justice was slow, but it was coming. I knew I had to stay strong, keep fighting, and stay true to myself. Because at the end of the day, I was the one who had been honest, who had loved and supported my family, something she'd clearly forgotten. Looking back now, I realize how much this whole ordeal changed me, how much I underestimated the capacity for betrayal that some people have. Jessica's actions didn't just break my trust, they shattered everything I thought I knew about the life we built together. The pain was intense, and honestly, there were days I felt like giving up. But somewhere inside, I found a strength I didn't know I had. I learned that standing up for yourself, even when everything seems lost, is the only way to truly reclaim your life. The court case finally wrapped up, and although Jessica kept trying to spin her lies, the evidence was undeniable. The house was returned to me, and she was ordered to pay back the stolen money and cover some of my legal expenses. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was enough to give me a sense of closure. Seeing her face in court, her bitchy smirk replaced by a look of defeat, was almost satisfying. She thought she could manipulate her way out of everything, but she underestimated the power of the truth. The kids are still adjusting. It's been a tough road, but I've stayed consistent, showing them love, patience, and honesty. I want them to know that even when life throws you the worst, you can come out the other side stronger. Jessica still tries to manipulate their perceptions, but I make a point to be open with them, to tell them I love them unconditionally and to be there whenever they need me. They're resilient, and I hope someday they'll see her for what she truly is, the woman who betrayed her family for her own selfish needs. As for me, I'm still healing. The scars will be there for a while, but I've learned to trust my instincts more. I've also learned that sometimes you have to fight dirty to get justice, exposing lies, gathering proof, and never backing down. I've come to accept that betrayal is a part of life, but it doesn't have to define your future. The most important thing is to stay true to who you are, to stand up for yourself, and to never let anyone take away your dignity. What I want others to take from this is simple. If you suspect something's wrong, don't ignore it. Trust your gut, gather evidence, and don't be afraid to fight for your rights. People can surprise you in the worst ways, but your strength lies in facing that betrayal head-on. It's not easy, and it hurts like hell, but in the end, honesty and perseverance will see you through. I've lost a lot, but I've gained clarity, and that for me is worth everything.